In this section, we'll cover the account repayment function. From a main menu, I can go to account repayment, and here I will then be able to search for my clients. Now, the account repayment function is used to manage the balances of all the client's debts, as well as the balance of fees owed to the debt counselor. So I can go search for my client by typing in any of his debt details, from request ID, debt type number, or ID number. So I can search for my ID number and find the client's info displayed here. The transactions I see here will only get created once I submit the file to Hyphen for the first time. Up to that point, no transactions for a client will exist. To go see how they work, I can go into, for instance, the ABSA credit card account for this case. So at the top it will give me some details about ABSA credit card. It will tell me what the current balance is, the calculated balance, what the duplum capital is, the current amount of duplum interest, what the current balance date is, what the calculated balance date is, and the calculated balance date will always be today, and the current balance date would be the date that's saved with the saved balance for the client on the system. Below I can see here, this is all the transactions that are queued for this client's account. So I will see that there's a success indicator. This indicator says, was that payment successful, yes or no. This indicator will also get automatically updated when we get messages from Hyphen as to whether a debit order was successful or not. We see the action date. This would be the date that was scheduled for the consumer on his payment plan when we submitted it to Hyphen. The effective date would then be the date that that payment was actually either debited or later distributed to the credit provider. That will also get manually updated by the message files from Hyphen, or you can go override it and insert the date yourself. The amount field is the actual amount that was scheduled to go off. So here we can see there was a partial payment in that first month for ABSA, and then the installment was paid for a period which then increased. So there I can see the actual scheduled installment they are meant to get. The additional amount field is there to cater for differences between what was scheduled to be paid and what was actually paid. Here I can insert either a positive or a negative value depending on whether the consumer paid more or less. For instance, if a consumer goes and makes R100 extra payment, I can go and put R100 in that field. Interest, balance, and duplum interest would be the section where we track the interest, the balance, and the in duplum interest to see the impact of section 103.5 of an account. The interest at this stage is zero because none of these have been successfully paid. So I want to see just the impact of some of these calculations. So I'm going to go set the first few to successful. At the top I have a few buttons. Back just goes back without saving anything. Refresh will update the calculations but not save them. And save will update any changes I made. So I changed a few things and I just want to see the impact of my changes. So I click refresh. Now you'll see the interest and balance here is calculated because there has been successful payments. So now you'll see also my calculated balance is now slightly different than what it was in right before I clicked that button. It was over 19,000. Now it's slightly less. And here I can see how that happens. On the 18th of March, we see there's quite a huge amount of interest charged to the account. Now the reason for that is that it says the balance date was in 2008 and only now we're paying, so it will calculate all the interest up to that point. Then we'll see what is that current balance that month, and so I go to the next line. In April there was a 200 Rand payment, see the interest amount charged was 200, and you'll see the balance then decreases from the previous one by that 11 Rand that we've paid off. If I now go and say make my additional amount 500, and I calculate that, you'll now see that by increasing the additional amount to 500 Rand, my current balance has changed. It has gone down by the difference where it was a 100 Rand additional amount, it's now 500, that 400 Rand amount got deducted extra. And so it will keep track of the balance for me and give me what today's balance is. This will then get used at the time when we do the calculations. So if I go into a client's file and I click negotiate, it will come to the transactions and read, this has been paid, these payments were not successful, and add interest and get to that same calculated balance and say, today that is what we owe, and then base the proposal going forward on that balance. So that if 3 or 4 years down the line we come and do a proposal, we don't start with our COB balance in which the client has paid money in and all that sort of thing. We can actually have an accurate balance. And although it is true that we'll never exactly match what the credit providers have as the balance, we will get relatively close to theirs. And what is envisaged is that at the end of the debt review process, you might have to schedule in one extra payment over and above what was originally planned to cater for the differences in balance. If I now go and save these changes, it will save any changes that I've made and apply them when I go into this client's file and click negotiate. The same principle will apply to things like DC fees. When I go and see here that it is scheduled that in 2011-02-18 that 3,000 Rand was supposed to be paid for the debt counseling fees, it says if it says no, it was never successful, I can say wait, the DC fees was successfully paid. I can say yes. If I were now to go out here and go find this client in my inbox, if I do a new proposal for this client, we can see here that the DC fees here are scheduled to be paid still, they are still outstanding. But if I click negotiate and it generates my plan, it will now go and read those calculations and it will pick up that the professional fee has already been successfully paid, and to that end it will not reschedule them into my plan. So now if I go to once-off schedules, you'll see that the bulk of a professional fee is not paid. It did pick up a small amount, maybe there was a little bit outstanding that this client's affordability was amended and his professional fee amount had actually gone up, but for the 3,000 Rand that I've said has been successfully paid is not scheduled into his plan anymore. And in that same manner, we can manipulate all of the balances and payments for a consumer on his accounts.